the economic pattern that predicts every empire's fall. Consider the possibility that the most powerful nation today may be gradually following the same trajectory that once led to the fall of Rome. This decline is not caused by invasion. It is not the result of a single war, not through one catastrophic event, but through debt. History teaches us that empires rarely collapse overnight. They decline gradually, then suddenly. The Roman Empire, the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, and countless others. Each believed its dominance would last forever. Each believed it was different. Each believed the rules of history no longer applied. Yet every empire eventually faced the same challenge. How do you sustain prosperity when debt grows faster than productivity? Today, some economists and historians argue that Western nations may be facing similar pressures. Not necessarily collapse, but a period of profound transformation. In this video, we will explore the historical rise and fall of empires, examine the warning signs that appeared before previous declines, and ask an important question. Are we witnessing the early stages of another great transition in economic history? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The life cycle of empires. Empires may seem unique. However, history shows they often follow similar patterns. Innovation typically marks the first stage. Nations develop new technologies, institutions, or ideas. Productivity rises. Trade expands. Living standards improve. Wealth accumulates. This is followed by a period of confidence. Investor optimism increases. Governments pursue more ambitious goals. Citizens grow accustomed to prosperity. Credit expands. Borrowing increases. Initially, these developments appear beneficial. Debt can fund infrastructure. Debt can finance business expansion. Debt can accelerate economic growth. However, a critical shift eventually occurs. The economy grows increasingly dependent on debt instead of productivity. Growth slows. Borrowing accelerates. The gap between wealth creation and debt creation widens appeared repeatedly throughout history. It is evident not only in ancient civilizations, but also in modern nations. Chapter 2. Economic Lessons from the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is widely regarded as one of the most successful civilizations in recorded history. At its zenith, the Roman Empire governed vast territories spanning Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Roman infrastructure, particularly its extensive road network, connected regions across multiple continents. The Roman military maintained strategic dominance over rival states and external threats. Roman currency facilitated commercial exchange throughout the Mediterranean and beyond. However, sustaining such a vast empire required significant financial resources. Military expenditures steadily increased. Overall government spending expanded in response to administrative and military demands. Political instability intensified during this period. To finance these increasing obligations, Roman authorities gradually reduced the silver content in their coinage. This process is known as currency debasement. A coin that once contained mostly silver eventually contained far less precious metal. The number of coins increased, but their value declined. Prices rose. Confidence weakened. Trade became more difficult. The empire did not collapse immediately. The process took decades. But eventually, economic deterioration contributed to political and military decline. Rome teaches us an important lesson. A strong economy cannot rely indefinitely on weakening its currency to solve structural problems. Eventually, reality catches up. Chapter 3. The British Empire and the Cost of Dominance. Over the course of several centuries, significant changes occurred. The British Empire became the largest empire in human history. At its height, Britain controlled nearly a quarter of the world's population. The British pound served as a global reserve currency. London became the center of international finance. However, maintaining global leadership imposed significant costs. 2 world wars dramatically increased government debt. The resulting financial burden grew substantially. Britain remained influential. However, Britain's economic dominance gradually declined. The reserve currency role eventually shifted to the United States. This historical trajectory does not indicate that Britain failed. On the contrary, Britain achieved considerable success. The key lesson is that even the most successful empires encounter limitations. Economic power inevitably shifts over time. Historical processes are inherently dynamic, not permanent. Chapter 4. The debt question. Debt is a central theme in economic history. Debt itself is not the problem. When managed effectively, debt can drive prosperity. Businesses borrow to expand. Families borrow to buy homes. Governments borrow to build infrastructure. Problems arise when debt outpaces productive capacity. If the farmer borrows to invest in better equipment and increases production, the debt is beneficial. However, if the farmer repeatedly borrows only to repay previous loans, the situation becomes unsustainable. The same principle applies to nations. Throughout history, countries that experienced major financial crises often accumulated debt faster than their economies expanded. The issue is not the existence of debt. The issue is dependence on debt. When borrowing becomes the main driver of growth, vulnerabilities develop. Chapter 5. The American Century. The United States emerged from World War II as the dominant economic power. American manufacturing experienced significant growth. Innovation advanced rapidly. The dollar became the world's reserve currency. For decades, productivity growth supported rising living standards. Millions entered the middle class. But over time, the economy evolved. Manufacturing's share of total employment declined. Financial markets became more influential. Government debt rose substantially. Household debt also increased. Corporate debt followed the same trend. The financial system expanded and grew more complex. None of this automatically signals decline. However, historians observe that similar transitions have occurred during earlier periods of imperial maturity. The question is not whether America will collapse. The question is whether the current model remains sustainable. Chapter 6. The warning signs history repeats. Historians often identify several warning signs that appear before major economic transitions. The first is rising debt burdens. The second is slowing productivity growth. The third is increasing wealth inequality. The fourth is political polarization. The fifth is declining trust in institutions. These factors have appeared to varying degrees in past historical transitions. However, none of these signs guarantee collapse. Together, they may indicate increasing systemic stress. When citizens lose confidence in institutions, economic challenges become more difficult to solve. Trust itself becomes an economic asset. And once trust erodes, rebuilding it can take generations. Chapter 7. Why empires rarely see it coming. One of the most fascinating aspects of history is that societies often fail to recognize their decline as it happens. People remain focused on their daily routines. Markets continue to function as usual. Businesses stay open. Technological progress continues. The overall system appears to function normally. This situation can create a misleading sense of stability. Significant transitions often unfold gradually. Warning signs typically become clear only in hindsight. This pattern has repeated in other societies as well. Historical moments rarely feel significant while they are happening. This is why studying long-term trends is important. It enables us to identify patterns that might otherwise go unnoticed. Chapter 8. What happens next? History shows that decline does not always lead to destruction. Nations adapt. Institutions reform. New industries emerge. Innovation drives new opportunities. Economic leadership shifts. Civilization continues. The world did not end after the fall of Rome. The world did not end after Britain's decline. The world did not end after numerous financial crises. History is not only a story of collapse. It is also a story of renewal. Every major transition brings challenges, but it also creates opportunities. The key is preparation, not panic. Understanding, not fear. Adaptation, not denial. Chapter 9. What investors should learn. The key lessons for investors are straightforward. Diversification matters. Strong balance sheets matter. Productive assets matter. Real businesses matter. History consistently favors those who prioritize long-term value over short-term speculation. Empires rise and fall. Currencies change. Governments change. Markets change. However, certain principles remain enduring. Own productive assets. Avoid excessive debt. Maintain liquidity. Think long-term. Do not assume that current conditions will persist indefinitely. The most successful investors do not attempt to predict every crisis. Instead, they focus on building resilience, regardless of future events. Conclusion: are we currently experiencing the decline of Western civilization? The reality is that no one can predict this outcome with certainty. Historical events do not repeat in identical ways. Each historical era possesses distinct characteristics. Each economy operates under unique conditions. However, historical patterns often exhibit similarities. These recurring patterns merit careful study. Debt, productivity, trust, and innovation. These forces have influenced the trajectories of nations for millennia. Regardless of whether the coming decades bring decline, renewal, or unforeseen developments, one fact remains clear. Individuals who possess a strong understanding of history are often better equipped to navigate the future. While technology continues to evolve, human behavior remains relatively constant. This may represent the most significant investment lesson. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to The Illiterate Investor, where we study markets, wealth, history, and human behavior to help ordinary people make better financial decisions, one lesson at a time.